Hello and welcome, dear students, to this virtual summer vacation program being conducted by UNDP India. It's wonderful to have you all here today. I am Kavya Mohan and I work as a project assistant with UNDP. I'm also a National UN Youth Volunteer. I will be introducing you today to the basics of climate change, and we will cover the following topics as you may see on the screen. In general, we will discuss about what climate change means, its impacts and causes, how can we respond to climate change through adaptation and mitigation, how can we be all change makers at individual level, and what is that one important initiative on part of United Nations among a sea of initiatives which you should know to fight climate change. So I hope you're excited about what we have in store for you today. I'm sure that some of you are already familiar with this topic through your parents, teachers, or even through news. And for some, this may be an unfamiliar topic too. In both ways, I'm sure you will have an engaging and informative experience, although we are not physically present. So let us get started and make the most out of this virtual program. So before we learn the technical aspects of climate change, let me tell you a short story. I hope I have all your attention right now. This is about Nanook, a polar bear who lives in the northernmost part of the earth, which is the Arctic. In the summers, Nanook would often wander around the shorelines and swim in the icy Arctic waters. And in the winters, she would retreat to her den to rest and save her energy. She loved at times relaxing under the sun on the icy sheets and rocks. And among many things that Nanook ate, can you guess what was her favorite? The seals, of course. So as time passed, Nanook saw that the icy sheets where she loved spending her time under the sun, it was melting. It was hotter than the usual. The temperature was rising. Her favorite food, the seals, they started migrating. Today, Nanook has a smaller space to walk around. She has less winter times to rest and less food to hunt. But why do you think there was this change in temperature and all other things that was happening with Nanook? It all boils down to one phenomenon, which is a threat not just to her, not just to Nanook, but all the living beings, nature, and the environment. Let us now address the elephant in the room, who is none other than climate change. So, as we observed in the story, climate change is a process that leads to an evident change in the temperature and weather pattern over a long period of time. Now, I have generally observed that weather and climate are often confused as carrying the same meaning. However, they both are completely different from each other. As a shorter way to understand the difference would be that weather is only temporary and can change over a short period of time, say days or months. For example, the city of Delhi in India, it may experience a sunny weather, a hot day today, and tomorrow it may even experience a cloudy weather with a tendency to rain. When it comes to climate, however, the change occurs over a long period of time, say 30 years or more. And its impacts may include rise in the sea levels, warmer environment, changing rain patterns, etc. So a region that is usually drought prone may experience unexpected heavy rains over a period of time, making it a flood prone region too, as you can see on the image on the right. So a classic example would be the state of Gujarat in India, which has actually, some of the regions in Gujarat have actually experienced this phenomenon of a drought-prone place completely going flood-prone. This change can be, however, due to natural and man-made reasons. So when we talk about natural factors, it includes phenomena such as volcanic eruptions, energy emitted from the sun, that is the solar radiation, so on and so forth. This means that change in the climate always existed, even before we all can remember. However, through natural factors, this change occurred in hundreds and thousands of years. At present, however, we are experiencing this change at a rather faster and deadlier rate due to human interventions. And that is why, whenever you will hear deliberations on climate change, it is always considered as a man made problem. But how are humans really contributing to climate change? What are humans doing exactly? So, there is this thing that we all humans love to use, something known as fossil fuels. To put it in simpler form, these are resources like coal, oil, and natural gas. We dig these from resources from the earth's surface and burn them for industrial purposes, for transports like buses and cars, and also for cooking. Burning these fossil fuel releases harmful gases like carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide to the sky, which causes a blanket-like structure around the earth. I have marked it as a green circle around the earth. So whenever the heat is emitted from the sun, generally some of the heat is reflected. It bounces back to the atmosphere. It touches the earth's surface and it bounces back to the atmosphere. And some of it gets even trapped on the earth's surface. However, when there is this blanket of greenhouse gases, more and more heat from the sun is only trapped and absorbed by the earth's surface. So, although climate change includes many alterations other than temperature, like sea level rise, rainfall patterns, melting glaciers, etc., today it is largely associated with something known as global warming. In simple words, the world is getting hotter and hotter. Climate change is the reason why we have extreme weather events like heat waves and droughts, and even floods. Melting glaciers and sea level rise is another common phenomenon which we are observing after climate change. Extinction of plants and animal species. And for humans, various diseases are also induced through climate change, like the respiratory diseases and vector-borne diseases. So unless we take a step forward to tackle this challenge, the world will become like a giant oven, and we all can imagine how life in an oven can be. So with this, let us now watch a 2 to 3 minute video that would sum up whatever I spoke and may even provide you with more information.
To understand climate change, think of the game Tetris. For eons, Earth has played a version of this game with blocks of carbon. They enter the atmosphere as carbon dioxide gas from volcanoes, decaying plant matter, breathing creatures, and the surface of the sea. And they leave the atmosphere when they're used by plants during photosynthesis, absorbed back into the ocean, or stored in soil and sediment. This game of Tetris is called the carbon cycle, and it's the engine of life on Earth. What's the connection to climate? Well, when that carbon dioxide is in the air waiting to be reabsorbed, it traps a portion of the sun's heat which would otherwise escape to space. That's why carbon dioxide is called a greenhouse gas. It creates a blanket of warmth known as the greenhouse effect that keeps our Earth from freezing like Mars. The more carbon dioxide blocks hang out in the atmosphere waiting to be cleared, the warmer Earth becomes. Though the amount of carbon in the atmosphere has varied through ice ages and asteroid impacts, over the past 8,000 years, the stable climate we know took shape, allowing human civilization to thrive. But about 200 years ago, we began digging up that old carbon that had been stored in the soil. These fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas, are made from the buried remains of plants and animals that died long before humans evolved. The energy stored inside them was able to power our factories, cars, and power plants. But burning these fuels also injected new carbon blocks into Earth's Tetris game. At the same time, we cleared forests for agriculture, reducing the Earth's ability to remove the blocks. And since 1750, the amount of carbon in the atmosphere has increased by 40% and shows no sign of slowing. Just like in Tetris, the more blocks pile up, the harder it becomes to restore stability. The extra carbon dioxide in the atmosphere accelerates the greenhouse effect by trapping more heat near the surface and causing polar ice caps to melt. And the more they melt, the less sunlight they're able to reflect, making the oceans warm even faster. Sea levels rise, coastal populations are threatened with flooding, natural ecosystems are disrupted, and the weather becomes more extreme over time. Climate change may affect different people and places in different ways, but ultimately it's a game that we're all stuck playing. And unlike in Tetris, we won't get a chance to start over and try again.
Hope you now know how climate change works. So, with its meaning and impacts being discussed, let us now discuss how can we fight climate change and make a better space for ourselves and future generations. Responding to climate change include two important components, that is climate adaptation and climate mitigation. To start with, the dictionary meaning of adaptation is to change or modify oneself or one's behavior to meet the changing needs of a situation or circumstance. Say, with respect to climate change, we all know that we may experience changes in weather patterns, temperatures, etc. Adapting to this change would mean making changes in our own ways to life to cope up with these impacts. It is to do with whatever we can do to minimize the uncomfortable situations or challenges climate change may cause in our lives. That being said, let us now understand the two types of adaptation, reactive and proactive adaptation. So reactive adaptation is approach to respond the visible impacts of climate change, basically the impacts that we are already experiencing. Among some of the climate change impacts we discussed, remember rise in the sea level was one, right? So last year, I heard that there was a house built near a seashore in Kerala, which collapsed because the water level had reached that house, causing it to submerge. So although initially that house was built very far away from the sea level at that time, it had now crossed those boundaries and reached that house, causing it to submerge. So now in this situation, a reactive adaptation measure would be to build seawalls to protect against the rising sea levels. Another example of adaptation approach could be to relocate the communities who are facing hazards like floods. So this approach is necessary, especially when the impacts of climate change are unavoidable, and it focuses on minimizing harm and reducing the vulnerability in the short term. On the other hand, proactive adaptation is a forward-looking approach that aims to reduce the risk and negative impacts of climate change even before they occur. An example could be that we all know that climate change is causing uncertain rainfall patterns, right? So assuming that it could stay like that in future as well, a prediction that we make, the measures can include improving water management systems to cope with the rainfall pattern. And this could be especially useful for the farmers whose crops are dependent on these weather patterns. Proactive adaptation is also a very important strategy for reducing the long-term risk associated with climate change. And it helps to promote sustainable development that is resilient to future climate conditions. So while climate change adaptation is about dealing with impacts, this is a very important point, students. So please note, climate change adaptation is about dealing with impacts, whereas climate mitigation focuses on dealing with the causes of climate change. Adaptation is associated to impacts, mitigation is associated to the causes. So remember the discussion on the greenhouse gas effect at the start of the session, where I had told you how the greenhouse gases are released into the sky, causing the blanket. The process of mitigation would focus on reducing this effect. Limiting the release of gas up to the sky can be achieved through various means. One could be decreasing the use of fossil fuel for power, heat, and transportation, and increasing the capacity of natural systems like the oceans, forests, soil, all of which can absorb these harmful gases instead of them going to the sky and trapping the heat. So, to explain both adaptation and mitigation in a simpler manner, let us use the analogy of a leaky roof. Now, I want you all to imagine that during a rainy time, your house, the roof in your house has started leaking. Let us call that leaky roof as climate change. With respect, so there are two strategies that we discussed right now, right? Adaptation and mitigation. So with respect to adaptation and mitigation, what would be some steps that you would follow? In a situation where there is a leaky roof, the adaptive measure would be putting a bucket under the leak to collect the water and prevent it from damaging your house, your furnitures. So this is a reactive approach to the problem because we are responding to the immediate effects of the leak. But are we really addressing the root causes here? So a mitigative approach to this would be repairing or replacing the roof. This would prevent the future damage that the roof may face during the rain. So here we are addressing the root cause of the problem and preventing it from happening in the first place. So to prevent the dangers associated with climate change, apart from the strategies that we discussed right now, adaptation and mitigation, all these are happening across the world. Climate change is happening, strategies to adapt and mitigate is happening. But who is looking into it? Who are the decision makers and who is basically monitoring all this? There are many platforms, there are many institutions, organizations, governing bodies who are looking into this matter. But in this 20 to 30-minute long session, there is so much I can tell you. And this was one important name that probably everyone speaks of, everyone knows of, which I thought that it would be useful for you as students as well. So to prevent the dangers associated to climate change and to measure the various adaptation and mitigation measures carried out by various countries, there is a series of conferences run by the United Nations since the year 1995. This is known as the Conference of Parties, or very famously known as COP. This is how many of you would be recognizing it. So it is organized under the UNFCCC, which is the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change. And it is attended by various organizations and representatives from different countries. At the COP meetings, delegates from member states and observer organizations gather to negotiate and agree on policies and actions aimed at addressing climate change. The first COP, the first conference of party, was held in Berlin, Germany in 1995. And since then, it has become a vital platform for global climate action. India is also a party to the UNFCCC and has participated actively in COP meetings. There are many targets that we have also submitted, which you all would like to explore. In general, however, the outcomes of some very important outcomes of COP include the Kyoto Protocol, Paris Agreement, and the establishment of the Green Climate Fund that has actively contributed to the adaptation and mitigation efforts of climate change. So for now, I want you all to be familiar with these. Getting into the details would be too much information for you. So if you are curious, you may further explore on these and the following questions that you may see on the screen. So we have covered some approaches and strategies used globally to combat climate change. My next and last section would be to understand what can you do as an individual as a youth, as a student, what can you do to fight climate change? And how can you be a change maker? So, students throughout the world, there is a growing awareness of climate change among young people, are now taking matters into their own hands. Activists such as Greta Thunberg and Vanessa Nakate have set an example by leading the charge for change. Movements such as Fridays for Future, which aims to persuade governments to create strong policies to fight climate change, have inspired youth led movements globally. There are many examples across the world where creativity and innovation are used to develop new technologies that reduce waste and emissions. This includes developing systems for capturing carbon dioxide, building electric cars, and creating new materials that can replace plastic. Everybody in that way can be a change maker. For instance, as a student, you may help your school to switch to energy efficient lighting, start a composting program to reduce food waste, or write letters to your local government to encourage them to prepare for natural disasters such as floods or earthquake. Every effort counts, no matter how small it may seem. With this, I would like to wrap up my session on the basics of climate change. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to join us today to learn about this important topic. I encourage you to continue learning and exploring ways in which you can make a difference, be a change maker. Let us work together to create a more sustainable and resilient world for ourselves and future generations.